Before going to Brunei, the first thing I ever heard about the country was, this is where they stone homosexuals. Stone like in stoning someone to death. Followed by, they have Sharia law. And they're a super strictly religious country. Everything is expensive, the sultan is super rich, but the people get nothing out of it. Yet everyone in Borneo told us, you can visit Brunei. It's not that bad. Actually, it is one of the richest countries in the world, and while making up only about 1% of Borneo's total landmass, almost 60% of it are covered with rainforest, and around 40% of that are declared protected areas. Crime rates are very low, and in general, it seems to be super safe. So how does this all add up? What is Brunei really like? This is a little bit of a story time video. I did not vlog during our time in Brunei because I was not sure if it would work out or if we maybe would run into trouble hearing about how strict the country is and how disturbing the laws seem to be. Yet I want this to be understood as a personal experience, as my personal perspective on the time we spent in the country. And it all started making an impression on us when... You may think now, if you were that skeptic already from the beginning, why did you even go to Brunei? And the first reason for it is pure curiosity. We heard and read a lot of critical stuff, yet on the other hand, Bornean locals told us it's not that big of a deal. And the second reason is, it is the only way to avoid flying when you would like to cross over from the Malaysian part of Borneo, Sarawak, to the other Malaysian part, Sabah. And already during the bus drive, it seemed a little bit odd to us how few people were actually traveling to Brunei. And while the bus ride itself is nothing special, the border control was... I'm not sure if I would call it confusing or disturbing, but what happened was I went to the passport control and hand over my passport. He takes it, looks through it, controls it, takes a little bit of time, gives it back to me and says, stay away from all activities. And I'm being a little bit scared, just that there was a lot of tension because we would go into that country, we would not know what to expect of, went like, yes, thank you, bye. Until today, we're not really sure what he meant. Did he mean like stay away from all shady activities? Or did he mean like from drinking activities? Alcohol, of course, is also prohibited in Brunei. Did he mean stay from sexual activities? Anyway, so we enter the country, enter the town. We went off a little bit too late, and then we tried to take a public bus to get to where our stay is. Unfortunately, we've run into I would call it one of the Brunei classic problems, because we realized they would not take Malaysian ringgit, they also would not take US dollar. The only thing they take are Brunei or Singapore dollar, which we did not have, and if you don't find an ATM immediately after getting out of the bus, you will have problems paying stuff in Brunei. Fortunately, and this is where we started beginning to get to know the good sides of Brunei, a stranger woman, a woman we didn't know, paid the bus for us. Eventually, we arrived in our stay in our hostel, and what followed was an extensive conversation that made a lot of things way more clear to me. And I'd like to get back to that, but for now, let's start. Strolling through the city, we could not make out anything too exceptional. It is not a mega city, there are no big skyscrapers, but it's a very developed and well-structured city. What you definitely can find, on the other hand, are lots of magnificent mosques. You can also visit the floating villages, and what you will find are even kind of upper class houses, schools, and a fire and police station. After spending half a day in Brunei, and also after that conversation I had in the hostel, I felt good and I felt safe. Until some irritating things started happening, and I maybe started At some time, I put my phone out and I tapped the gallery because I wanted to check a few pictures or videos I took, and I realized that it is full, that there's a ton of... I was wearing very thin pants, and you could actually see on the pictures shapes of buildings, and you could recognize places and see where we were walking, and on the videos you could even hear parts of the conversation me and Kat had. My mind just went like, is that really happening? Are they watching us? On the other hand, I did know that if I get sweaty and you have this foil on your phone, it's sometimes just... After seeing the footage so far, you may want to ask, okay, but where are the people? Where are actually all the citizens? Most of what you showed us until now are empty streets. During the time we traveled the country, that's how restaurants looked. And there's a reason for that. It's called Ramadan. Ramadan is a Muslim fasting season where people fast from sunrise to sunset. Fasting includes all kind of foods, all kind of beverages, even water. But what many people do not know is that it does not apply to everyone the same. Say for children, for elderly, or for sick people, there is something like breaking the fast if you would actually endanger yourself or your health. Anyway, when I say it applied also for us, that only meant that we were not allowed to eat or drink publicly, but we were absolutely fine buying food, taking it away, and having it privately. Knowing that, it is actually quite easy to find the people if you know where you can find cost-worthy food in Brunei. What can I say? We had a good day, we had a good time, we were walking back to our stay, it was getting late, it was slowly getting dark. We were walking through a residential area where I suddenly heard my mind, my heart were racing, and I was looking around and people were running around, and I was realizing these people were children, and then a bigger figure stepped out of the shadows and I realized this bigger figure as their dad, and also realized that they were just playing football. In general, nothing bad happened. All people we met were very nice and very welcoming. No matter where we would go, when people would come up and speak to us, you of course always have some grumpy people, but most of them would actually say, "Welcome to Brunei, welcome to our country." And like I said, I don't know what I was expecting. We saw a girl wearing a skirt, not covering, but actually showing her knees. We saw a Muslim couple holding hands, and we saw someone eat in the public before sunset. Going back to the talk I had at the hostel, the guy explained those laws and how the country runs to me. And he said, all these laws that are criticized internationally so heavily, they do not affect us. And I think what he meant was they do not really affect everyday life, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it, that when you grow up in a country, in a Muslim country, or in a country that has Islam as their main religion, core values are different than in a country that grows up with Christianity. So I asked him, but what about the Sharia laws? And a thing I did not know before going to Brunei is that there is no such thing as the Sharia law, and it's up to the country, to the political and also religious leaders to define what Sharia law actually means. Do I agree with them? Definitely not. So I also asked, why did you even put them into place? He explained to me that some of the people think that the sultan has put up these laws in case he may struggle one day for power. Others think he did it for his successor, in case that he may not be as good of a sultan or not as appreciated as the current one is. One more thing I'd like to add on, and that was also part of that conversation we had, is that if Brunei was really that bad of a place to live, like that bad of a country, you don't really have a hard time leaving it. it's quite easy to get out of the country. It literally takes you like 1 or 2 hours. It is the night we're about to leave, and I started to hear a morning sound. And it was getting louder and louder, and I thought, well, it's that time again. But then the noise started sounding more like pain than pleasure, and I started realizing that there was people talking, indistinct chatter, and I just woke up. I was confused, so I stood up, went to the door, started listening, and I heard all those voices, but I couldn't understand what they were saying. I couldn't understand the language, and I decided to grab the doorknob, turn it around, opened the door. The man turned around to me saying,
"Immigration, it's okay. Immigration, it's okay. Immigration, sir, it's okay. Please go back."
And it was a little bit too much at that point. I was scared on the one hand, confused on the other, looking around and seeing a girl sobbing, having a crying fit, just being unable to speak a word. And next to her, sitting a woman that looked like she was comforting her. And I don't know if that was the right call or not, but I slowly closed the door again, not sure what was happening. I tried to get back to sleep, and that sobbing sound continued for a little bit. I don't have a shit clue what was actually happening, nor if the case was really as serious as it seems, or if the girl may have been very sensitive. Whatever happened could have happened in a lot of countries we traveled, and it would have not been less scary. I was projecting all my fears and insecurities in the situation at hand. Somehow certain what I was making up in my head was undoubtedly true. We woke up the next day, and it was kind of a bitter taste leaving that country with that last experience. Running late to catch our ferry, we were fortunate enough to experience the good sides of Brunei again. We got out of the bus and we were way too late. So Kat started waving and trying to catch a car, and a guy stopped out of nowhere, like literally not even after 5 minutes. I think the first car that went by stopped. A guy with a pickup, not speaking a word of English, taking us with him, and expecting nothing. Just being cool with helping out. And leaving Brunei, I saw what it was famous for and kind of had to think back to the conversation I had at the hostel. Around 50% today, formerly 70 to 60% of the GDP rely solely on crude oil and natural gas. It also makes up about 90% of Brunei's exports. And currently having that big trend of sustainability and a big trend of awareness, and also information being available all over the world through the internet, fossil resources will run out one day. And Brunei knows that too. So that's what they have been trying to build kind of a tourism industry over the course of the last years. And this is probably also why those laws that were criticized so heavily were put into place. At least that's how I explain it to me. And again, I do not agree with these laws. It's ridiculous. Just the idea that the lack or the absence of free speech and expression of freedom, that's unimaginable to me. Yet it also makes me appreciate how privileged I am without even knowing about it, without even realizing it so often. And there's one thing that I've learned from the time Brunei. It's another thing I wrote down, and I think that applies to different countries we traveled, and in general to us as humanity. We sympathize so much with the idea of fear that we are more likely to believe in differences than in similarities, and rather appreciate the illusion of threat instead of very real opportunities to learn, to grow, to understand and comprehend a little bit more of this world we live in.